Have you ever wondered how a small town, lost between hills, managed to become the greatest empire in history, dominating people, wealth, and territories? But what if I told you there was a fatal mistake that destroyed it all? Today, we're diving into the secrets no one ever told you about the rise and fall of the Roman Empire. And pay close attention, because what happened to Rome might just be repeating itself today. Don't go anywhere, because the details coming up will change the way you see history. It all started in a simple way. Long before becoming a superpower, Rome was just a small village surrounded by hills, with people looking for a safe place to live. But what happened next changed everything forever. The Latin and Sabine peoples, coming from Central Europe, saw the Italian peninsula as the perfect opportunity to thrive. Settling along the Tiber River, they started building their new home, never imagining they were laying the foundation for a legendary city. But here's the first plot twist: was Rome really built like that, or is there something darker behind it? If you think Rome was founded peacefully, think again. According to legend, the city was born from a brutal murder between brothers. It's said that the twin brothers, Romulus and Remus, descendants of the Trojan hero Aeneas, were abandoned as babies and thrown into the Tiber River by order of a cruel king. But fate had other plans. A fierce she-wolf found and cared for the boys until they were rescued by a shepherd. They grew up strong and eventually decided to build a city. But ambition got in the way. After a heated argument, Romulus killed Remus and became the first king of Rome. But was it just a myth, or is there a hidden truth behind this story? Rome started small, but with strategic kings and a fierce army, the city quickly grew. Thanks to King Servius Tullius, the city expanded, reaching 285 hectares, and its population grew to around 30,000 people. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, and stay tuned here on the channel. Let's hit our goal of 1,000 subscribers together. But here's the thing: the last king, Tarquinius Superbus, thought he was above everyone else. He ignored the Senate and made decisions that seriously angered the people. The result? In 509 BC, the Romans revolted and expelled him, marking the start of a new chapter in history, the Republic. But did this new era bring more freedom, or did it just shift power to another elite? With the Republic in place, Rome seemed unstoppable. But there was a catch: the power wasn't for everyone. Only the patricians, the elite of the time, had political rights, while the plebeians, the majority of the population, struggled to get even the scraps. This created a deep sense of resentment and frustration that slowly started to shake the city's foundations. Rome expanded its borders rapidly, conquering nearby cities like Veii, but the cost of expansion was steep. You might not realize it, but the same mistakes Rome made could be happening today. Rome faced many challenges, but its worst came in 390 BC, when the Gauls invaded and looted the city. It was a moment of sheer terror for the Romans, who realized they needed to strengthen their defenses. That's how the impressive Servian Wall was born, a fortress built to protect Rome from future invasions. But was a wall really enough to stop future attacks? Rome's expansion didn't go unnoticed, and in 264 BC, the city went to war with its biggest rival, Carthage, in the famous First Punic War. Carthage had a powerful navy and impressive resources, but Rome showed its cleverness and managed to conquer the island of Sicily, as well as Corsica and Sardinia, securing control over the Mediterranean. But then came an adversary Rome would never forget: Hannibal, the Carthaginian general who crossed the Alps with elephants, devastating several Roman regions. What did Rome do to resist this threat? And more importantly, how did the Romans turn things around? Rome seemed unstoppable, but there was a silent weakness: internal corruption. The Senate started prioritizing its own interests, the soldiers were unhappy, and revolts became more and more common. Over time, Rome grew so big that controlling everything became nearly impossible. And that's how the empire began to crumble, allowing enemies to take advantage of its weaknesses. Does this make sense to you? Comment number 1 if it does, or number 0 if you disagree and share your opinion. Was Rome's fall inevitable? Or could it have been avoided? Rome teaches us that no empire is invincible. No matter how strong a nation may seem, internal problems can be far more dangerous than external enemies. And if we look around today, we might notice some striking parallels with our modern society. Are we repeating the same mistakes that destroyed Rome? Rome, the greatest empire in history, built with blood, sweat, and epic conquests. But what if I told you it all fell apart because of a mistake that could have been avoided? Stick around till the end, because you're about to find out how Rome rose to power, and what tore it apart from the inside. Get ready for betrayals, epic battles, and decisions that changed the course of history. It all started with the fall of Rome's monarchy. The last king, Tarquinius Superbus, believed he was invincible. He ruled with an iron fist, ignoring the Senate and hoarding power. But, the Roman people had had enough. In 509 BC, a revolt broke out. Tarquinius was expelled and assassinated, marking the beginning of a new era, the Roman Republic, a system that promised to give more power to the people. But did the people actually rule? Or was power just handed over to the wealthy elite? The idea of a republic sounded perfect, no kings, no tyranny. But reality was quite different. Only the patricians, Rome's wealthy and influential families, had real power. They controlled the laws, the decisions, and the wealth, while the vast majority, the plebeians, struggled to survive. By this time, Rome already covered an impressive 822 square kilometers and had between 35,000 and 45,000 inhabitants. But expansion seemed to be the only way to keep the system running. And so, the era of relentless conquests began. Starting around 500 BC, Rome set its sights beyond its borders. Neighboring cities were seen as opportunities for growth, or better yet, as targets. Between 499 and 396 BC, Rome faced one of its first major wars against the city of Veii. It was a tough, long battle, but in the end, Veii was conquered and annexed. But this victory came at a high cost. In 390 BC, Rome suffered its greatest humiliation. The Gauls crossed their defenses and sacked the city. Panic took over the Romans. It was a blow that could have ended everything, but Rome learned fast and built an impenetrable defense, the famous Servian Wall, a massive fortification to protect the city from future invasions. Now, Rome was ready to expand like never before. After the Gallic threat, Rome turned its attention to the Italian peninsula. Between 343 and 290 BC, the Romans fought battle after battle, conquering city after city. Their biggest victory was defeating the powerful Greek city of Tarentum in the south of Italy after the brutal Pyrrhic War in 272 BC. But that was just the beginning. Rome now had its eyes on a much bigger enemy. If Rome wanted to dominate the world, it first had to defeat its biggest rival, Carthage, a naval powerhouse in North Africa. In 264 BC, the First Punic War began, with both sides fighting for control over Sicily. It was a brutal war, forcing Rome to learn how to fight at sea. After years of bloody battles, in 241 BC, Rome finally defeated the Carthaginians and took control of Sicily. Then, they moved on to conquer Corsica and Sardinia. But their biggest challenge was yet to come. If Rome thought they had seen it all, they were wrong. In 218 BC, during the Second Punic War, Rome faced its worst nightmare, Hannibal Barca. He crossed the Alps, bringing with him an army and war elephants. He crushed the Roman legions, defeating them in several battles, including the catastrophic Battle of Cannae, where more than 50,000 Roman soldiers were slaughtered. Rome was on its knees, but it didn't give up. With a brilliant strategy, the Romans struck directly at Carthage, forcing Hannibal to return and defend his city. In 202 BC, at the Battle of Zama, the Romans claimed victory and put an end to the Carthaginian threat. Rome had become unstoppable, or so they thought. With Carthage defeated, Rome set its sights on the east and west. In 200 BC, the Greek city-states, feeling threatened by the Macedonians, asked Rome for help. And of course, Rome accepted, and never left. By 197 BC, King Philip V of Macedon was defeated. Meanwhile, in Spain, Rome was advancing fast. By 179 BC, they had taken control of the southern part of the Iberian Peninsula and began turning the region into a new province. But a new war was just around the corner. Rome seemed invincible, but inside its walls, trouble was brewing. Corruption, internal disputes, and an insatiable hunger for power began to weaken the empire. The leaders cared more about their wealth than the people, and the once unbeatable army started to lose its strength. Slowly but surely, Rome began to fall. Rome's story is a clear lesson: no empire lasts forever. Arrogance, greed, and internal corruption proved to be more destructive than any enemy army. Rome, a city that started small, grew beyond imagination, and became the greatest empire in history. But, do you really know how it all happened? Get ready, because we're about to reveal the most jaw-dropping details of Rome's rise and fall. From glorious victories to humiliating defeats, every step was crucial in shaping Rome into what we know today. Stick around until the end, because what you're about to hear might completely change the way you see history. Imagine a massive empire covering 2.75 million square kilometers, with over 56 million people living under its rule. That was Rome at its peak. But here's the question few people ask: how did Rome manage to control all of this? In the early days of the Principate era, emperors still respected some republican traditions, like the Senate. But behind the scenes, the real power was already concentrated in the hands of the emperors. And with that power, Rome was hungry for more. Rome was never satisfied with what it had, it always wanted more. In 16 BC, the Romans pushed their borders north, conquering the regions of Rhaetia and Noricum, lands that are now part of Austria and Switzerland. Enjoying this story? Hit that like button and help keep Rome's legacy alive. But on the other side of the Rhine River, a growing threat was emerging: the Germanic tribes. Confident as always, the Romans believed they could crush them easily. And then came one of their biggest lessons, and one of their greatest defeats. In 9 AD, Rome faced a nightmare. During a campaign to subdue the Germanic tribes, 3 entire Roman legions were ambushed and annihilated in the Teutoburg forest. It was an unprecedented disaster. Rome, which saw itself as invincible, was utterly humiliated. The loss was so devastating that Emperor Augustus, upon hearing the news, reportedly walked the palace halls shouting, "Varus, give me back my legions." From that day on, Rome changed its strategy. The dream of expanding deeper into Germania was put on hold, for now. But Rome didn't give up easily. The next target? The mysterious island of Britannia, home to fierce warriors and feared druids. In 43 AD, under Emperor Claudius, the Roman legions crossed the English Channel and began annexing lands in the south of the island. The conquest wasn't easy, but within a few years, cities like Essex and Lincoln were under Roman control. Rome seemed unstoppable, or so it appeared. When Emperor Trajan took the throne, he had one clear goal: Rome had never been this big, but it could still grow even more. So, between 114 and 117 AD, the Roman legions conquered Armenia, Mesopotamia, and Syria, pushing Rome to its territorial peak. Imagine this: 6.5 million square kilometers and 88 million people under Roman rule. Rome now controlled 1/5 of the world's population. But, did it grow too much? After Trajan's death, his successor, Hadrian, realized that Rome was getting way too big. Controlling such vast territories was expensive, risky, and exhausting. The solution? Stop expanding and start protecting. That's when the Hadrian's Wall was built in 122 AD, a colossal fortification designed to hold back the northern tribes of Britannia. Rome was closing in on itself. But, would that be enough to keep the empire together? What once seemed like an unshakable empire started to crack. From 235 AD, Rome plunged into complete chaos, entering what's known as the crisis of the 3rd century. Emperors were being assassinated one after another, military expenses were out of control, and enemies sensed Rome's growing weakness. Taxes skyrocketed, rebellions broke out, and Rome was on the verge of collapse. Then, the unthinkable happened. In 260 AD, Rome lost huge territories when two provinces broke away and formed rebellious empires. The Gallic Empire, which took control of Gaul, Britannia, and Spain. The Palmyrene Empire, which ruled over Syria, Egypt, and parts of Anatolia. Rome seemed to be falling apart, but there was still hope. Rome's lesson for the future: what can we learn from Rome's rise and fall? Whether it's an empire or a business, growing too fast without proper planning can be a major problem. Rome taught us that conquering isn't enough, you need to know how to hold on to what you've gained. And if we look around today, we might just see some striking similarities between Rome and modern empires. Are we repeating the same mistakes? Rome, the empire that conquered the world, seemed invincible. But, little by little, cracks started to show. How could such a powerful empire crumble before its own eyes? Stick around till the end, because today you'll discover the surprising twists and fatal mistakes that led to Rome's ultimate downfall. In 268 AD, Rome achieved an important victory by reclaiming Spain and southern Gaul. But, was that enough to stop the decline? Just a few years later, in 271 AD, Rome was forced to make a drastic decision. The province of Dacia was abandoned, once considered a crucial stronghold for Rome's expansion. Still, Rome wasn't ready to give up. In 273 AD, it managed to take back the territories lost to the Palmyrene Empire, and by 274 AD, the Gallic Empire was crushed, restoring key regions that stabilized Rome's borders. But this winning streak wouldn't last forever. Diocletian's bold move, dividing the empire. In 284 AD, a new player entered the scene: Emperor Diocletian, a visionary leader who understood that Rome was way too big for one man to rule. So, in 286 AD, he made a radical decision: split the empire in two. The Western Empire, with its capital in Rome, was handed over to co-emperor Maximian. The Eastern Empire, with its capital in Byzantium, remained under Diocletian's control. Was this division Rome's salvation, or the beginning of the end? Even with the split, Rome was still too much to handle. So in 293 AD, Diocletian went further and divided power once more, creating the Tetrarchy, a system where the empire was split into 4 regions, each ruled by an emperor. 1. Egypt and the eastern provinces. 2. Italy and Africa proconsular. 3. Spain, Gaul, and Britannia. 4. The Balkan provinces. For a while, this new strategy brought some stability, but as we know, nothing lasts forever. Civil War and the fall of Rome. By 313 AD, internal conflicts erupted once again. 2 powerful leaders rose to the top, Constantine and Licinius. The civil war between them ended in 324 AD, when Constantine finally defeated Licinius and took over as sole ruler. But, the empire was no longer what it once was. After Constantine's death in 337 AD, the empire was split between his 3 sons, Constantine II, Constans I, and Constantius II. But ambition got the best of them. In 340 AD, Constantine II died in a dispute over Italy, leaving the empire even more vulnerable. While Rome was struggling to stay in power, its enemies were watching and waiting. The invasion of the barbarians with the advance of the Huns from Asia, desperate barbarian tribes began pouring across Rome's borders. In 379 AD, the appointment of Theodosius I as Emperor of the East was Rome's attempt to hold things together. But in 395 AD, after Theodosius' death, Rome was permanently split. The Western Roman Empire, with its capital in Milan. The Eastern Roman Empire, with its capital in Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul, later known as the Byzantine Empire. Rome was officially divided, and the beginning of the end had arrived. Is history repeating itself? The story of Rome isn't just about battles and conquests. It's a reminder of what happens when power grows too fast, and corruption takes over. Are we making the same mistakes today? If this story resonates with you, drop a 1 in the comments. If you have a different opinion, comment 0, and share your thoughts. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Let's keep the legacy of Rome alive together. The Western Roman Empire, with its capital in Milan. The Eastern Roman Empire, with its capital in Constantinople, what would later be known as the Byzantine Empire. From that moment on, the fate of the West was sealed. The final collapse, Rome is sacked. The final blow came in 410 AD, when the Visigoths, led by Alaric, stormed into Rome and looted the city. This event shook the Roman world to its core. People started asking themselves, is this the end? Meanwhile, the Vandals, another barbarian group, crossed over from Spain to North Africa, capturing Carthage in 439 AD and establishing a kingdom that posed an even greater threat to the already crumbling Western Roman Empire. 476 AD, the end of an era. Then, in 476 AD, the unthinkable happened. The last Roman emperor of the West, Romulus Augustulus, was overthrown by a barbarian warrior named Odoacer, who declared himself the king of Italy. And just like that, the Western Roman Empire was no more. All that remained was the Byzantine Empire, which would survive for another 1,000 years before finally falling to the Ottomans in 1453 AD. Rome taught us an important lesson: no empire is invincible. Internal corruption, lack of planning, and unchecked ambition were just as destructive as the invading barbarian forces. Think Rome's story is over? Think again. If you think this story ends here, think again. Rome's influence is still everywhere today, in our laws, culture, and even the way we design our cities. But here's the real question: if Rome, with all its power and grandeur, fell, could modern empires be headed toward the same fate?